2-minute warning. Is everybody ready? Good afternoon, everyone. I hereby call this remote meeting of the Washington Metro Rail Safety Commission to order. This meeting is being recorded as well as streamed live for the public. Mr. Smith, do we have a quorum today?
Yes, Chair, we have a quorum. You're in attendance. Commissioners Rush, Farrar-Dyke, Al-Khatib, and Lobby are present right now.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. We will start today with our safety message from Operations Specialist Daryl Braxton. Mr. Braxton. Is Mr. Braxton with us today?
Yes, Chair Hart. I apologize for the technical difficulty, but thank you, Chair Hart. March is the National Ladder Safety Month. Whether you're working at Metro, at home, or somewhere else, be sure to plan ahead to get the job done safely. This includes checking the ladder for damage and for anything that may be slippery on the steps. OSHA also highlights the need to make sure the ladder can sustain the weight on it, including any tools or equipment you may have. Be sure to maintain 3 points of contact, such as 2 hands and 1 foot when climbing or descending. Remember not to use the top of an A-frame ladder as the step. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Braxton. We will now move to the minutes from our last meeting. Secretary Treasurer Farrar-Dyke, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon. The minutes of the January 24th, 2023 meeting were posted for your review. Are there any additional corrections or additions to the minutes? I move approval of the January 24th minutes as circulated. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Rush has seconded the motion. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say yay.
Yay.
Any opposed, please raise your hand and say nay.
Commissioner Farrar-Dyke, the vote is 5-0 and the motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Farrar-Dyke and Mr. Smith. Next on our agenda is that we provide an opportunity for public comments at each of our meetings. And we will now ask if any members of the public who have joined our Zoom webinar would like to speak. If you would like to speak, please use the raise hand feature in Zoom and our staff will unmute one person at a time. Each person will have a maximum of 2 minutes. I will pause now and see if we have any public comments. While we're waiting, I would also remind everyone, including those of you watching on YouTube, that you can always report any concerns through our website, WMSC.gov, through our social media channels like Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, or by email. Ms. Minor, do we have anyone who has indicated they would like to speak today?
Yes, Chair Hart. We have one speaker, William Jackson. Mr. Jackson, you have 2 minutes. You are unmuted. Mr. Jackson.
You guys can hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. Good afternoon, Chair Hart and commissioners and Dr. Mayor and the rest of the commission. I just wanted to, first of all, thank you guys so much for your work. And I wanted to just give a brief comment. I was watching I guess it was the hearing with the DC Council, I think it was several weeks ago. I wanted to just give a brief note. There seemed to be some confusion about kind of from the council what the commission does, what the intent was legally. I did, of course, you guys are the experts. I am just kind of getting into this field, into the interest, things like that. I'm no expert. I did wonder if perhaps if maybe having them officially read part 674 would be helpful. There just seems to be some confusion about from the public, from the council, just that you guys really are not a political entity, that you guys, for lack of a better word, are a franchise of the state safety oversight system. There seemed to be some confusion about that, and I'm just a little worried that we're kind of bumping into the politics territory about things that should not be political. And I think if they actually just maybe read the code, I think that may actually help clarify, because I'm not sure they were understanding Dr. Mayor's answer to that. And it is written out formally, so I think that potentially could help them. So I just wanted to let you guys just add that to the record. And I really wanted to thank you guys for your work, and I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for your comment. We will take that up and consider that, and I will ask Dr. Meyer to look into what's a good way to get that clarifying word out. Dr. Meyer, do you have any comment on that?
Other than to thank the speaker very much for his comments and to assure him that we will take them to heart, and very much appreciated.
And I would like to second thanking the speaker for commenting in public. I appreciate that. Next on our agenda is my remarks. Our meeting today includes updates on the WMSC's ongoing safety oversight activities and the actions that we take on a daily basis to ensure that Metro Rail continuously improves the safety of its system. Before we turn to that, I would like to reiterate our condolences to Mr. Robert Cunningham's family, friends, and Metro coworkers, as well as the entire community affected by gun violence, as he stepped in to try to de-escalate a dangerous situation and lost his life in the process. Our best wishes go to Mr. Cunningham's family and friends. Dr. Meyer, do you have any opening remarks?
Yes, sir, I do. I'd like to echo you regarding our condolences to Mr. Cunningham's family, friends, and Metro coworkers, as well as the entire community. I want to thank our, I want to thank our team for its continued dedicated work on behalf of the region to ensure that Metro Rail carries out its safety commitments and that Metro Rail follows through on its commitment to continuously improve safety. Our teams work across specific subject areas and through our broader programs, such as safety certification, continues to identify areas of progress at Metro Rail and areas where improvements are needed. Regarding the 7000 series rail cars, our team continues our systematic data-driven approach. We continue our regular communication with Metro Rail and our review of data. This includes data from current operations, as well as the information that has continued to be available to us and to Metro Rail through the investigation into the October 12th, 2021 derailment. The NTSB made some of that information public last week as part of the investigation's public docket. For your understanding, this is information that parties to the investigation, such as Metro Rail and the WMSC, have had access to and worked on as part of the investigative activities since the derailment occurred. As the materials included in that docket demonstrate, The investigation is ongoing. They also demonstrate, as has been previously stated publicly, there are likely to be multiple contributing factors to wheel migration on Metrorail railcar axles. As demonstrated by the WMSC's actions to provide for the safety of Metrorail riders and workers since October 12, 2021, all parties to the investigation are always empowered to take the necessary safety steps based on the available investigative data to provide for safety improvements. Metrorail announced plans publicly last week to consider one such change to address safety deficiencies that were not identified during the initial 7000 series design process. This, excuse me, this potential change in wheel set assembly requirements would bring the cars more into line with industry norms. To ensure that this change is fully developed and implemented in a way that has the intended safety benefit, the WMSC has continued to communicate to Metrorail the importance of Metrorail following its change management and safety certification processes to ensure a holistic approach that mitigates the risk of unintended consequences and addresses safety issues on a systematic basis. This includes specific engineering analysis and review of individual changes to wheel set assembly or truck design to ensure that all elements of the vehicle and other Metrorail systems, such as track, can handle such changes, as well as the review and implementation of other safety improvements that may be determined for the Metrorail system based on additional ongoing reviews, analysis, and study in the coming months. Ms. Shamara Singha will provide additional information about our oversight of Metrorail's activities related to the 7000 series railcars in a few minutes. As always, we continue our oversight of all elements of the Metrorail system with a focus on Metrorail meeting its documented safety requirements. This includes ongoing work to understand additional changes Metrorail is considering to its roadway worker protection program. We have raised specific safety questions and concerns and continue to follow up on those issues. Metrorail provided some additional information as recently as yesterday. Our team is reviewing that information and is awaiting additional documentation that Metrorail committed last month to providing. We also continue to monitor Metrorail staffing in the Rail Operations Control Center. Maintaining safe and effective operations requires personnel who get regular training, coaching, quality assurance checks, and are able to take time off. And it also requires a well-planned pipeline of new talent that is developed and grown on an ongoing basis. After some past progress, the staffing in the ROC has slipped. We are concerned about the negative effect this could have on the safety of operations and have communicated this concern to multiple levels of the Metrorail organization. Given the extended training required and the need to demonstrate proficiency, training new controllers currently takes about 9 months. We recently have increased the frequency of formal scheduled meetings that bring together ROC and safety department leadership to ensure that Metrorail as an organization is taking steps to provide the necessary day-to-day staffing to continue operating safely. We also continue to oversee Metrorail's high voltage power operations and associated staffing and training. As you will recall, the WMSC issued an order on power restoration last year that led to specific safety mitigations to mitigate the risk of improper power restoration. Metrorail also developed a detailed corrective action plan that it is now implementing. We monitor Metrorail's implementation and request follow-up documentation when necessary. We are continuing our oversight of Metrorail's activities related to the possible implementation of automatic train operation and automatic door operation. This includes regular meetings, review of Metrorail documentation, and requests for additional information and documentation. Our review includes questions about timelines, training, roadway worker protection, and the preparedness of not just the physical systems, but also the organization to effectively and safely operate what is essentially a completely new system for most current Metrorail frontline employees. We are continuing our interactions with Metrorail with a focus on Metrorail's identification of organizational and operational hazards as required by its safety certification program and other Metrorail safety commitments. Mr. Sahu will provide more details later in the meeting regarding our continuing work and continuing safety concerns in this area. A WMSC team at Alexandria Rail Yard on February 8th observed hazardous conditions in the storeroom that posed a risk to workers, with large shelving units that were buckling and leaning, as well as missing fall protection features. Metrorail had previously identified the need for immediate closure of the room. However, personnel on site told us that the room was not going to be shut down until at least midsummer. We communicated to Metrorail that we appreciated that identification of the safety issue, but that additional mitigations appeared to be required. Metrorail responded in a timely fashion by implementing fall protection mitigations, by removing materials from the buckling shelving units, and by blocking off access to the area closest to those units. We appreciate Metrorail's timely response and action to address this issue once we identified it. Moving to ongoing investigations, we offer our condolences to the family of the person who died after being dragged by a train at Dunloring Station on February 15th. The investigation into this event is ongoing, and as with each accident-level event, this investigation will lead to a final report that will be presented at a future public meeting. Our investigations team is also working with Metrorail's safety investigators to examine other recent events, such as several station evacuations for life safety reasons. Each investigation is intended to identify opportunities for safety improvements. The WMSC notified Metrorail of improper train movements made during a smoke event near Shaw Howard University Station on February 9th. This event is under investigation. The team is also investigating an event last week related to a 7000 series rail car that was placed into passenger service Thursday morning, despite not meeting Metrorail safety requirements. The car had not been inspected in the required interval to ensure that it was safe to operate. Ms. Samara Singha will provide more details in a moment. As part of our oversight of Metrorail's emergency preparedness and other operational elements of Metrorail, our team observed Metrorail's emergency exercise at Wheaton Station on February 26th. These planned and controlled exercises are valuable opportunities to identify things that are working well, as well as areas for improvement. This allows for proactive, continuous improvement without waiting for a safety event to occur. Metrorail carrying out these exercises on a regular basis is, of course, a positive practice. As part of the exercise, there are typically injects or inputs that are created to make the experience more real for the participants to obtain the greatest benefit. This particular exercise was arranged on track 2 with trains single tracking to bypass the station on track 1. As discussed in the safety briefing, individuals involved in the exercise were not to cross barriers and signage that had been placed on the platform and were to stay in the track 2 area, but were to act as if track 1 was out of service for the exercise. During the exercise, the WMSC team heard radio communication on the special radio channel being used for the exercise regarding a rail supervisor accessing track 1 to check whether third rail power was energized. Because it was unclear whether this was radio communication only as part of the exercise, or if it was a Metrorail worker participating in the exercise accessing active mainline track without real-world protection, the WMSC raised this issue to Metrorail organizers. Further review determined that the individual had actually entered the track 1 roadway, which was being used for service. This event, as well as passengers inadvertently gaining access to the exercise area, is under investigation. Metro is also conducting its usual after-action work to identify and reinforce positive practices from the exercise and to address areas for improvement. These exercises and the lessons learned from them are valuable steps for continuous safety improvement and the understanding of both Metrorail personnel and other responders. Since the last public meeting, I testified with Ms. Samara Singha's support before committees of the DC Council and the Maryland General Assembly regarding our ongoing effective oversight work. I appreciate the council members and delegates providing us with that opportunity and support. Finally, our team is finalizing our annual state safety oversight reporting, or SSOR. It's a data submission to the Federal Transit Administration. This is due for all state safety oversight agencies by March 15th of each year, and we will again meet that deadline. We appreciate the FTA staff who provide guidance on navigating their system, the extensive guidance on navigating their system, and we will be completing our other annual reports on schedule in the coming months. Thank you, and that concludes my remarks.
Thank you, Dr. Meyer, for that very comprehensive report. Are there any questions from any of the commissioners for Dr. Meyer? I have one myself, but I want to see if any of the other commissioners also have questions.
I have a question, Chair Hart.
Yes, please, Commissioner Lavin.
You know, I think it's very interesting. I heard about Metro's announcement on their return to automatic train operation. I know that this is going to be a change to the operation that's going to require WMSC approval and full safety certification by Washington Metro. But you know, just an observation, I hope Metro understands how complicated a return to automatic train operation is going to be. It's not just a matter of flipping a switch and turning the system back on. The automatic train operation equipment has been stagnant for almost, I guess, 14 years now since the Fort Totten accident. Many operators that currently work for Washington Metro have never operated an ATO. So it's really necessary to train all the operators on the system. That's going to be very necessary. Probably new policies and procedures need to be put in place and at least updated on how to respond to failures of the ATO system, how to handle roadway workers, because that would be a big change in the way they approach that. And, you know, they also have to consider how they're going to make sure that drivers maintain their skill set. In the old days, I know that the drivers maybe had one day a week where they operated manually just to keep their skills, so that when the ATO system did go down, that they would be able to continue to operate the trains. Since the ATO was shut down, we've had a whole series of rail cars, the 7,000 rail cars, that I understand are equipped to operate an ATO, automatic train operation, but have never been operated in that mode. I'm not even sure if when they were delivered, whether these systems were tested. So we have all the 7,000 cars that basically need to be qualified to make sure that they operate appropriately. The ATO was shut down because of the tragic accident at Fort Totten. And before that, there was another accident in Shady Grove. Both those accidents were fatal, and they were caused by ATO system issues. And I hope also that as Washington Metro moves towards automatic train operation, I hope that they don't forget the lessons that were learned in those two tragic accidents. Dr. Mayer, in your opinion, is Metro considering all these different elements? This seems like a very, very complicated task to quickly get ATO up and operating on this system. Are they aware of these issues?
We share your view that this is a very big undertaking, and like you, many of us have been paying attention to or otherwise involved in the issue of automation in many platforms, and particularly at Metro Rail. This is something we've engaged with them, not just recently, but over the long run, over the last few years. And we have asked a number of questions and had a number of sessions with Metro Rail representatives to impress upon them that this is much more than just simply making sure the electric circuits perform as intended. This is also very much an opportunity to ensure that the humans in the loop, both the train operators, the controllers, the maintainers, and everyone, also performs as intended. So we believe that increasingly Metro Rail is appreciating the size of the undertaking. And as you pointed out a moment ago, we indicated last year that we would be doing an in-depth review of Metro's safety certification activities in this regard before providing our concurrence on their safety certification, which will allow the system to be placed into passenger use. And I mentioned that to make the point that we are working with Metro to ensure that the safety certification is conducted appropriately in broad terms, so that it takes into account many of the elements that you've just been discussing.
Well, that's good to hear. I know that automatic train operations have have a lot of benefits to offer, but with all technology, it needs to be implemented correctly. And hopefully Washington Metro will be committed to make sure that this system is implemented in a way that basically guarantees the safety of the traveling public. So thank you very much for that answer, Dr. Meyer.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Commissioner Bob.
yes, I just have a quick question for David. When these systems are implemented, let's say the automatic train operations, is it normally done wherein there are test runs without passengers over a period of time?
Well, certainly is. I mean, the answer is yes, although I'll make the point that every transit property that exists out there is unique to itself. So there are different considerations that are appropriate for each property. But in this specific case, yes, Metro is engaged in and planning a program of tests before actually using the system in passenger service. Ms. Samarasinga, I don't know if you have any more details on that aspect that you'd want to share.
We are being comprehensive in the safety oversight that we are bringing to bear on this project, including being raising our concerns, providing feedback, including in the areas of the test that Metro is planning to conduct in order to validate for itself that it is ready to reactivate automatic train operations. And our focus is to ensure that those tests provide the necessary validation that, as Commissioner Lobby pointed out, the issues that have been discovered through various means, including fatal accidents several years back, are all taken into account and thoroughly understood, and equivalent mitigations are in place, and those mitigations are also tested out in these test plans. So yes, test plans are being assembled, but our oversight is making sure that Metro is being thoughtful and integrating meaningful requirements in those test plans.
And I would just mention to Chair Hart that I saw Commissioner Rush's hand up a moment ago.
Yes, please, Commissioner Rush.
I just want to interject. I mean, I don't disagree with anything that's been said, but we shouldn't lose sight of the fact that potentially the automatic train operations are a safer mode of operating than we have today. We certainly have seen a number of instances of incidents due to operator error. And so we shouldn't lose sight of the fact that there are significant safety benefits, I think, to be obtained, but it just needs to be done properly, which is what Bob Labby's point was, and his points are well taken.
That said, I would add, though, that operating trains in automatic mode does not allow humans to be taken out of the loop, because they do have to be ready to perform. For instance, if a train is not stopping when it's programmed to stop, or otherwise in the loop. And we have seen safety events over the years, such as station overruns or red signal overruns, that suggest that maybe train operators are not as engaged in the task as we'd like to have them. Providing automation could have the unintended consequence of further disengaging them from the task. So keeping the humans appropriately in the loop will be a matter that is also important in the automated era if we return to it.
Yeah, I'm very much familiar with those arguments, and I'm not going to disagree with you, David, but I will say that I think ultimately, again, we do have. It's not unique to Amada, have human factor incidents that occur, and I do believe automation is the way to go. So, we need to make sure as our oversight capability that everything proper is done in terms of implementing the system. But I do think potentially it is a safer system.
Well, thank you, Commissioner Rush. I had comments for Dr. Meyer regarding automation as well, because of all the automation work that I've done most notably in aviation, but also more recently in our own cars being automated. And I think people are realizing that automation, A, can be very valuable and improve safety, but B, is a double-edged sword that needs to ensure that when the system is designed, it's designed to take care of two things. One is outright failures, like occurred in Fort Totten. that's bad enough, but even more insidious and difficult to design for is how to make sure that the automation doesn't encounter unanticipated circumstances, as Dr. Meyer mentioned, and end up producing the wrong outcome. So that's going to be a big challenge for us as we look at automation in our system. There are some mass transit systems around the world that are completely automated. We obviously have a long way to go. And what I mean is no operator on the train. We obviously have a long way to go before that. But I'm Dr. Meyer, I'm assuming that you're in your work that you're going to be doing on automation, you're going to be looking at how automation is working in other properties as well to see what kind of lessons they've learned so that we don't have to reinvent that wheel.
Yes, absolutely. And you've been introduced in recent months to Paul Smith, who's joined our team, who is our program manager for signals and train control, and he brings a wealth of experience and also has spent his time since joining us a few months ago really coming up to speed on the Metro Rail system, since he's not been a WMATA employee in the past. So he's providing, along with the rest of our team, is providing a very well-balanced and thoughtful insight on that topic.
Okay, Dr. Meyer, thank you for that. Are there any other questions from any of the commissioners for Dr. Meyer regarding his opening remarks? Okay, thank you, Dr. Meyer, and thank you, commissioners who participated. And next on our agenda, we will move on to a status update on the 7000 series rail cars. Ms. Samara Singha, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair Hart. We continue to oversee Metro Rail's implementation of the Return to Service Plan. Metro Rail's plan and the submission of any revisions is required in accordance with the WMSC's December 29th, 2021 order. We continue to carry out our work based on the available safety data and information. Metro Rail continues to inspect all 7000 series rail cars back-to-back dimensions and journal bearing gaps on a 7-day cycle in accordance with the Return to Service Plan. Last week, Metro Rail placed a car 7242, into passenger service Thursday morning, despite it not meeting the requirements of the Return to Service Plan. Car 7242 had not been inspected for back-to-back or journal-bearing gap measurements to ensure its safety within the required time frame and was not intended to go out into service. Metro Rail notified us of the safety issue Thursday night. We are investigating the circumstances. The investigation includes Metro Rail's electronic systems and operational procedures related to yard operations, control of cars, and tracking of rail cars, and Metro Rail's compliance with those procedures. It also includes Metro Rail's supervisory and managerial oversight. Metro Rail is testing interim mitigations to address some of the immediately evident issues. The WMSC remains engaged with Metro Rail regarding potential revisions to the Return to Service Plan based on all available data. This includes data related to recent measurements, as well as previous data demonstrating wheel migration on 7000 series axles. Recent revisions by Metro Rail that the WMSC provided no objections to relate to adjustments to Metro Rail's car control procedures related to which Metro Rail vehicles personnel are responsible for steps related to clearing rail cars for passenger service. The WMSC continues to communicate with Metro Rail based on our ongoing review of new information, data, and analysis. We continue to raise and resolve issues as they arise on an ongoing basis. To share an example of the positive systemic results Metro Rail is achieving under the Return to Service Plan developed under our oversight, Metro Rail is now overseeing and making improvements to track conditions and track inspections based on data collected by the 7000 series rail cars that Metro Rail had not utilized in the past. The Vehicle Track Interaction, or VTI, system is on a sampling of rail cars throughout the 7000 series fleet. Metro Rail included the use of this data in Return to Service plans last year after the WMSC highlighted it as an example of safety data available to Metro Rail that Metro Rail was not utilizing at the time. After WMSC follow-ups as part of our oversight of Metro Rail's implementation of the plan, Metro Rail shared this data with track engineers, and those engineers began to develop methods to effectively evaluate the data. Late last summer, Metrorail used the VTI data to identify locations, primarily frogs at interlockings, where track repairs were needed. In some locations, these needed repairs had not been identified in track inspection data. This demonstrates the value of utilizing all available safety information to maintain both safety and reliability. Metrorail's track engineers have continued to make positive progress on building a systemic review process for this VTI data, which is leading to further improvements. For example, Metrorail's track engineers were able to identify additional locations for special inspection and repair, and determined in January of this year that Metrorail could make improvements to the frog inspection process and provide additional training and clarification to track inspectors. Metrorail issued a memo adjusting the requirements and provided the training. The WMSC appreciates the progress of Metrorail's track engineers once they were introduced to the details of the data in acting upon this data to provide for safety improvements now and into the future. As Dr. Meyer briefly mentioned earlier, Metrorail issued a press release last week regarding one of the safety improvements that had been identified during the course of the NTSB investigation that is likely to be one part of the long-term design improvements for the Metrorail system. Specifically, this relates to deficiencies in wheel set assembly specifications that were not identified during the initial 7000 series design process. Based on the current data, increasing the interference fit and press tonnage requirements is likely a sound mitigation. It would bring the wheel set assembly requirements for 7000 series cars more in line with the industry norms. In accordance with Metrorail's change management procedures and agency safety plan, additional work is needed to ensure that making such a change will not lead to unintended consequences. For example, engineering analysis and review is needed to ensure that the axles can support such a change and to determine whether the change will introduce new forces onto the other parts of the railcar, track, or structures that may need to be mitigated. This is why the WMSC has continued to communicate to Metrorail the importance of Metrorail following its change management and safety certification process to ensure a holistic approach that mitigates the risk of unintended consequences and addresses safety issues on a systemic basis. This would be a long-term effort. As I mentioned, we maintain ongoing communication with all levels of Metrorail management and staff regarding potential timelines and other adjustments Metrorail may propose to the return to service plan, including based on additional data on cars that continue to operate. That data is expected later this month. And that completes my update. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Samarasinghe. Are there any questions from any of the commissioners for Ms. Samarasinghe?
I have a question, Chair Hart.
Yes, Commissioner Lowry.
Commissioner Lobby, you were accidentally muted.
Oh, that's better. This has to do with car 7242, I believe, that was put in service when it should not have been put in service. And I guess Metro picked that up and told us about that car being in service that evening. Do we know how that happened? Was it a clerical error? Were car numbers mixed up? Do we know how that happened?
Commissioner Lobby, and just kind of reinforcing the update on that. The investigation is ongoing. Our safety investigations team, along with Metrorail safety investigators, are digging into all aspects of where the failure points were. And at this time, we are unable to say definitively what those failure points were. We are looking into procedures. We are looking into personnel who had a contributory role in all manner of clearing that car downstream, all the way to it appearing on the rail system. But at this time, there is no definitive information that I can share with you on that.
Yeah, it's when you talked about this, you talked about Metro Rail testing some interim mitigations to address some of the immediately evident issues, and I was more concerned if we knew what the immediately evident issues might be.
We can get you that information definitely in the coming days, but presently I would rather not go into that level of detail because I don't have the supporting information.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Laube. Are there any other questions for Ms. Samarasinghe from the commissioners? Okay, seeing none, we will now move on to our next item, which is audits with an update from Program Coordination Specialist Ashley Rhodes. Ms. Rhodes?
Thank you, Chair Hart. Since the last public meeting, we have held an exit conference with Metro Rail to discuss preliminary findings from our structures audit. We are now developing a draft final report to transmit to Metro Rail. We have also conducted on-site work and interviews for our audit of Metro Rail's roadway maintenance machine program. We are preparing for an exit conference next week to discuss preliminary findings. As always, we raised certain issues to Metro Rail during the audit work. In this case, it included issues such as missing National Fire Protection Association or NFPA signage on a lubrication storage room at the Greenbelt Rail Yard, which Metro Rail is correcting. On-site activities for our next audit of automatic train control and signaling are scheduled for later this month. As with each of our audits, the work on these audits included extensive reviews of Metro Rail documents, on-site work such as interviews, and, where relevant, site visits to various parts of the Metro Rail system. This includes interactions with multiple Metro Rail organizational units with responsibilities for the area we are auditing. Our audits assess Metro Rail against the relevant criteria, such as the requirements of Metro Rail's Public Transportation Agency Safety Plan, requirements specified in other Metro Rail documents, such as SOPs and orders, and regulatory requirements. These audits cover all aspects of Metro Rail's Public Transportation Agency Safety Plan over a 3-year period and are designed to proactively identify safety issues. Thank you. That completes this presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Rhodes. Are there any questions from the commissioners for Ms. Rhodes? Okay, seeing none, we will now take up the next agenda item, which is corrective action plans, audits and CAPS. Program Manager, Mr. Davis Radjic, will present that report.
Thank you, Chair Hart. Since the last public meeting, we have closed 7 CAPs and approved 5 new Metro Rail CAP proposals for implementation. This is in addition to work related to CAP modification requests from Metro Rail. When Metro Rail develops corrective action plans to address the safety deficiencies identified by WMSC findings and recommendations, or those issues specified by the WMSC program standard, Metro Rail submits these plans to the WMSC for review and approval. Each CAP is a specific plan to address a safety deficiency, so the proactive identification of these deficiencies by the WMSC and later the resolution of those deficiencies by Metro Rail is part of the continuous safety improvement process. After Metro Rail submits acceptable CAP proposals that will address the safety deficiency, Metro Rail is responsible for implementing its corrective action plans on the schedule documented in the CAP. We conduct our audits and oversight activities on an ongoing basis. This has led to audits which to this point have each included findings being issued every few months. Corrective actions to address each finding typically take months or years to implement, as the CAPs are designed to systematically address issues identified by the finding. CAPs typically also include documentation of implementation prior to closure by the WMSC. The systemic nature of required fixes and the WMSC's detailed ongoing work means that the raw number of open CAPs may increase over time. The existence of CAPs demonstrates the ongoing work toward continuous improvement. Even after a CAP is closed, the WMSC also monitors Metro Rail's actions on an ongoing basis through our audit, inspection, and other oversight activities. Recently, Metrorail has submitted a number of CAP extension requests. In accordance with the WMSC program standard, these are considered as modification requests. Regarding the latest new CAP proposals submitted by Metrorail, we have approved 2 of the 10 proposed corrective action plans related to last year's track audit for implementation. The 8 others remain in development. We have approved 1 of the 3 proposed corrective action plans for implementation related to the internal safety review program audit issued in January. We just received revised versions of the 2 remaining CAPs, and our team is currently reviewing those proposals. Overall, Metrorail currently has 125 WMSC CAPs that it is in the process of implementing. This is in addition to those CAPs that remain under development. Since the last public meeting, the WMSC has closed 7 CAPs. Metrorail's implementation of each of these CAPs improves the safety of the system for riders and workers. As part of C-119, Metrorail has developed a process to track and conduct physicals for safety-sensitive employees. This addresses the finding of our 2021 Fitness for Duty audit that Metrorail was not conducting safety-sensitive physicals as required by its policies and did not document or track when the physicals were due for all employees. This posed a risk that personnel acting in safety-sensitive functions, such as operating trains, could be doing so with undiagnosed or untreated conditions that, when not properly managed, increase the risk of incapacitation. Metrorail has demonstrated that it has been following its new tracking procedure and is now conducting safety-sensitive physicals. This is a clear example of safety progress. Also related to safety-sensitive personnel, Metrorail has implemented CAP C-128 to ensure that Metrorail consistently removes employees from service for positive drug and alcohol test results in a timely manner as required by federal regulations. Metrorail has implemented a new procedure with specific time frame and documentation requirements. Other CAPs closed since your last meeting include C-186 related to the rail operations audit, finding that Metrorail was not meeting its operational refresher training and recertification requirements for existing operators. Metrorail provided training for individuals who were past due, conducted recertifications, and implemented a procedure for train operators to provide notifications to managers regarding training or certification that is due. This led to Metrorail certifying all active train operators. For this purpose, train operators include all those in roles that require train operator certification, such as rail supervisors, interlocking operators. The WMSC continues to conduct inspections and investigations to spot check training and certification records for both new and existing personnel. Metrorail has also implemented CAP C-88 related to roadway maintenance machine equipment operators. This addresses the finding that equipment operators are not fully trained on each type of vehicle they may be directed to operate. In addition to new training courses and new training tracking processes, Metrorail determined the number of trained operators needed for each unique type of equipment. One closed CAP relates to the Rail Operations Control Center. C-53 relates to Metrorail procedures that lack the required urgency to address life safety issues. Metrorail has updated these procedures and provided training. As with each CAP, the WMSC will continue to assess the effectiveness of these safety mitigations on an ongoing basis. One CAP relates to the high voltage and traction power audit and addresses a finding that Metrorail is relying on vital equipment that is beyond its useful life. C-152 required that Metrorail develop a defined conditions-based assessment process, provided mitigation and engineering modification progress updates, and provided traction power projects included in Metrorail's capital plans. Finally, regarding the automatic train control CAP of C-107, this addresses a finding that there was no formal process for maintenance personnel to request an engineering modification or manual change. Metrorail has now updated ATC manuals to establish this process. Thank you. Are there any questions?
Chair Hart, you're muted if you said something.
Oops, thank you very much. Technical glitch. It's a human factors issue here. Thank you, Mr. Raddick. Are there any questions for Mr. Raddick from the commissioners? Okay, hearing none, we will now move to our next agenda item, which is an update on some of the WMSC's latest activities overseeing Metro Rail's safety certification process. Mr. Sahu, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Hart. Metro Rail's safety certification process is a critical element of Metro Rail's safety management system, consistently identifying hazards and mitigating the likelihood and severity of those hazards in a systematic way as documented in Metro Rail's policy and procedures so it provides for the overall safety of the Metro Rail system. To achieve this, Metro Rail must carry out all elements of its safety requirements without bypassing any part of this holistic safety process. We oversee Metro Rail's safety certification through field observations, document and data review, and regular meetings with Metro Rail, as well as by observing Metro Rail's safety certification committees and working groups. We are continuing to monitor Metro Rail's implementation of mitigations designated as part of Metro Rail's Silver Line Phase 2 safety certification. This includes, for example, spot checking the installation of updated emergency evacuation boards on rail cars and spot checking operational restrictions on ladders and other systems in the rail yard that require additional work before they can be used safely. Other projects that require our concurrence before Metro Rail places them into passenger service include the new Potomac Yard Station and Metro Rail's possible initiation of automatic train operation or automatic door operation. We're continuing to engage with Metro Rail regarding outstanding issues regarding their automatic train operation and automatic door operation efforts, as we have for several years. ATO is a system Metro Rail was designed with, but that few current personnel have operated or maintained, and that has not been used in the current operating environment. Metro Rail's operations have also changed since Metro Rail ceased automatic train operations in 2009. That includes changes related to conducting work and roadway worker protection. The WMSC's automatic train control and signaling team, as well as my colleagues assisting me in oversight of Metro Rail's safety certification process, continue our careful oversight and consistent communication with Metro Rail. For example, the WMSC has asked specific questions regarding information in Metro Rail's plans, but some of Metro Rail's responses have indicated that they are unaware of what they have put in their plans. We are continuing our interactions with Metro Rail with a focus on Metro Rail's identification and mitigation of organizational and operational hazards as required by Metro Rail's safety certification program and other Metro Rail safety commitments. Our review includes questions about timelines, training, roadway worker protection, and the preparedness of not just the physical systems, but also the organization to effectively and safely operate what is essentially a completely new system for most current Metro Rail frontline employees. Metro Rail's safety certification process requires that known hazards be identified and properly addressed. This is a significant effort that requires Metro Rail to ensure its entire organization is ready for such a change to activate these features for the first time in the current environment. This includes addressing hazards introduced by automatic operations, assessing and addressing necessary changes in operating practices, and developing and delivering complete training on this complex operating tool. We are awaiting further information from Metro Rail and expect to have additional questions related to new information and apparent refinements Metro Rail is making to its plans. Metro Rail told the WMSC late last week that there is no schedule at this time for further testing and that Metro Rail is planning to conduct initial testing related specifically to the physical rail car and wayside infrastructure. Another major project that Metro Rail is carrying out and that Metro Rail is conducting its safety certification of is the Potomac Yard Station. This is also a project that we have designated for an in-depth WMSC review of Metro Rail's safety certification process, and that therefore requires our concurrence that Metro Rail has completed this process before Metro Rail opens the station to riders. Potomac Yard is a infill station that Metro Rail is building on the blue and yellow lines in Alexandria, along with associated new track and systems. We have observed progress in the site and continue to review documentation. We also continue to ask Metro Rail to keep us informed of any work on AWIS, which is Automated Wayside Inspection Systems. Metro Rail describes these systems as a potential use to capture an array of measurements from rail cars that are in use to provide an additional layer of safety. As we communicated to Metro Rail last year, we will review the first location for our concurrence, and Metro Rail will follow the same validation and examination process for the other sites. Similarly, we conduct oversight work on Metro Rail's other safety certification activities. It is in all cases Metro Rail's responsibility to carry out this work in accordance with its own policies and procedures. Metro Rail's 8,000 series rail cars are among projects that are underway now that are several years away from arrival in the Metro Rail system. Along with other members of the WMSC team, I monitor Metro Rail's progress and safety certification activities for the 8,000 series cars. As always, if we identify any areas of concern, we communicate them to Metro Rail. Metro Rail's work at this stage includes a biweekly safety certification working group and other internal working groups. Metro Rail is still developing the preliminary hazard analysis ahead of the preliminary design review. Other hazard analysis is also in progress related to fire and system hazards, and Metro Rail is reviewing the failure mode, effects, and criticality analysis, the FAMICA, and providing feedback to the car builder, Hitachi. Thank you, Chair Hart. That completes this presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Sahu. Are there any questions from any of the commissioners for Mr. Sahu? Okay, we already had an extensive discussion about automation, and I see you're on top of that. So good luck with a very challenging project.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Hart.
We will now move on to safety event investigation reports that are being presented today. We will hear presentations on all of the reports and then consider a single motion on all of the reports that are presented that we are prepared to adopt today. If any commissioner wishes to remove a report from the group that we will consider for adoption in a single vote, please indicate that at the end of the presentations on that report. Investigation analyst Natalie Keyrose will present the first reports. Ms. Keyrose.
Thank you, Chair Hart. The first group of investigation reports on your agenda today relate to evacuations for life safety reasons in September and November 2022. These events are classified under federal regulation as accidents, requiring investigation regarding emergency preparedness and response, and therefore are also classified as accidents under the WMSC program standard. 4 of these events relate to evacuations due to smoke or what appeared to be smoke, and the 5th relates to a shooting. Investigation Whiskey 0201 relates to an evacuation of Courthouse Station on November 7th. Smoke entered the passenger area of the station from a dome vent, an opening you can see on the bottom right of the slide that allows airflow to and from the passenger area. Video shows that smoke first came through the vent at approximately 7:46 p.m. as a train was stopped on the platform. More smoke moved in as the train departed, creating air movement. No Metro Rail riders or workers appeared to notice the smoke. 2 other trains arrived and departed, drawing more smoke into the passenger platform area. A rider exiting the 4th train identified and reported the smoke to the station manager. At about the same time, 7:56 p.m., the train operator of the next train to enter the station reported that there was a lot of smoke. The train operator described it as the whole platform is smoking up. The train operator said they shut down their environmental system and kept moving. A maintenance controller activated station ventilation fans. The rail controller initially started to contact a train leaving Roslyn for Courthouse, but then stopped. The train operator continued toward Courthouse Station and was then told to stop in the tunnel. The rail controller told the train operator to reverse ends and move back toward Roslyn. However, another train had approached the Roslyn Station platform. The rail controller then directed the train operator to operate the train with passengers on board toward the smoke at Courthouse Station, proceeding through the station with the ventilation system turned off and without stopping. Other Orange and Silver Line trains were directed on both Ops 4 and Ops 2 radio channels to bypass the station. The station was evacuated. The station manager suggested it was possible the smoke was coming from the light pylons on the platform. The Rail Operations Information Center information controller reported to Arlington County Fire that the smoke was coming from a pylon, and Metro Rail dispatched a low voltage power crew for smoke or fire from a platform light. Arlington County Fire Department personnel found no evidence of smoke or fire from a station pylon as had been reported to them, so they left the scene to Metro Rail maintenance personnel. Approximately an hour after the smoke was first visible, Metro Rail personnel reviewed video and saw that the smoke had come through the dome vent. During the time the station was closed and evacuated for life safety reasons, Metro Rail data system showed train 901 stopped at and serviced the station platform. Power personnel investigating identified that multiple fan breakers were tripped. Metrorail repaired them after the system closed for the night. Metrorail did not follow the incident command system throughout the response, leading to a lack of clear determination of how to proceed as additional information was identified by responding personnel. There was also confusion about communications related to Metrorail's SOP 1A, governing command and control of emergencies, and whether the SOP was being implemented. Corrective actions related to this investigation include improving Rail Operations Control Center training, providing incident management training, and providing specific steps and requirements related to Metrorail's SOP 1A. These actions are due for completion in the coming months. Metrorail carried out an after-action review for this event involving responding entities, which is a positive practice. Thank you. That completes this presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Key Rose. Are there any questions from the commissioners from Ms. Key Rose?
I have a question, Chair Hart.
Yes, please, Commissioner Lowry.
Ms. Key, on this particular accident, there's a lot of discussion about smoke. Is there smoke? Where is it coming from? We even had passengers reporting smoke. Are there no smoke detectors in the particular individual stations that would basically, detect smoke and provide an alarm to someone?
There are many different smoke detectors in the station in specific rooms, but I don't believe there are in the platform area.
So no smoke detectors in the platform area. I know that at one point there was an NTSB recommendation about smoke detectors on Washington Metro. Was this just in the individual rooms, or was it for the general station areas? Do you know whether that was for general station areas or not?
I believe that was through the tunnels, and I think there's a pilot on the red line that they might be looking into that detects smoke within the tunnels.
Okay, so Washington Metro really has no plans to put smoke detectors that we know of in the stations themselves?
Not at this time, from my understanding.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Lobby. Any other questions from Ms. Key Rose? Okay, Ms. Key Rose, I believe the next report is also yours. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair Hart. Investigation Whiskey 0202 relates to an evacuation of Friendship Heights Station on September 26, 2022, due to smoke from electrical arcing. A train operator observed and reported arcing and smoke from the area of a third rail insulator near the interlocking outside the station at 9:57 p.m. Metrorail personnel properly had this passenger train move away from the smoke back to Bethesda Station, then de-energize the rail power. During this time, the station manager reported smoke in the station. About 6 minutes after the train operator reported the smoke, and about 2 minutes after the station manager reported the smoke, a train moving in the opposite direction arrived on the platform and serviced Friendship Heights Station. That train operator also reported smoke, and the rail traffic controller directed the train operator to reverse ends and take the train back to Tillingtown Station. Also, during this event, Metrorail's fan desk maintenance controller did not activate emergency ventilation fans as requested by the Buttons rail traffic controller. The Rail Operations Information Center information controller made a follow-up request about 3 minutes later. The fan desk controller activated the fans at 10:06 p.m., about 3 minutes after the second request. After first responders arrived, the Friendship Heights station manager was instructed at approximately 10:13 to evacuate riders from the station. Metrorail replaced the insulator damaged by this arcing event. Metrorail scheduled and then completed work to replace other corroded and missing insulators at this location approximately 3 weeks after the event. Open corrective action plans related to this event include C0162, addressing that Metrorail does not consistently follow the incident command system structure. This CAP is scheduled for completion January 2025. And C0225, which is currently being developed, addressing that Metrorail's organizational structure prevents Metrorail from effectively ensuring that its track is maintained in a good state of repair as specified by Metrorail policies, procedures, and standards. Thank you. That completes this presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Key Rose. Are there any questions from any of the commissioners for Ms. Key Rose?
I have a question, Chair Hart.
Yes, please, Commissioner Lobby.
You mentioned that there's corroded and also missing insulators. Is that common for the third rail to have missing insulators?
Can anybody help with that question?
Yeah. See, Tino, do you have a response to that?
Yes, so I think from the WMATA's track standards, Metro's track standards, there's 3 missing in a row. That's their highest critical condition. So you do occasionally have one missing. Obviously, you'd like to replace it, but the load is, from their calculations, load can be handled if there is one missing.
So, Mr. Sahu, how does it become missing? Is it taken out, or does it melt, or does it burn up, or what?
Yeah, so if you have an arcing incident, right? So you have brake dust that tracks up third rail insulator, via liquid or whatever way. They do sometimes have to knock that insulator out, and they'll come back during non-revenue service to replace it.
But that's not an issue to have a few missing insulators along the third rail?
As long as it's not in a row. If you look at the track standards.
Okay. So it's allowed per their procedures.
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Commissioner Lobby. Any further questions regarding this report? Okay, seeing none, Ms. Key Rose, I believe the next report is also yours.
Thank you, Chair Hart. Investigation Whiskey 0203 relates to the evacuation for life safety reasons of part of L'Enfant Plaza Station due to a shooting inside the station. During their response, there were deficiencies related to incident command and communication. This includes Safety Department, Office of Emergency Preparedness personnel not following the incident command structure or having complete situational awareness, and radio communication challenges that led to some communication being funneled through the Mission Assurance Coordinator in the Rail Operations Control Center. MetroRail has open corrective action plans it's implementing related to not consistently following the incident command system structure, roadway worker protection for Metro Transit Police Department personnel, and communication of radio system outages to the Metro Transit Police Department personnel. The Metro Transit Police Department hot wash for this event was extremely effective at identifying positive practices and areas for improvement for future responses. The WMSC appreciates this MetroRail work towards continuous safety improvement. Investigation Whiskey 0204 relates to an evacuation for life safety reasons of Suitland Station on September 13th, 2022. This was due to smoke from wiring in the station manager kiosk area. An automatic fare collection technician working in the area observed the smoke and an alarm displayed in the Maintenance Operation Control Center. The maintenance controller contacted the station manager, who reported smoke coming from under the kiosk. The station was evacuated and closed with trains bypassing the station. MetroRail personnel used an emergency panel to disconnect power to the smoking wires until temporary repairs could be made. The investigation concluded that previous work on fare machines in the kiosk area had to cut into wiring, and that damage then allowed the smoke event to occur. The final evacuation for life safety reasons investigation on the agenda today is Whiskey 0205 regarding an evacuation of Forest Glen Station on November 14th, 2022. At 8:03 a.m., the station manager at the entrance level reported to the Rail Operations Information Center that a fire alarm had activated. The information controller called for a fire department response. At 8:07 a.m., the station manager informed the information controller that the station was being evacuated. A Rail Operations Control Center Assistant Operations Manager then directed the station manager not to evacuate the station and to instead investigate. MetroRail's procedures allow for stopping an evacuation only if an inspection of the alarm location demonstrates that there's no smoke or fire. At 8:13 a.m., the other station manager, who was positioned at the platform level at Forest Glen, Reported smoke was visible in the station coming from the direction of Silver Springs Station on track 1. Metrorail then stopped train service, and the station managers confirmed the station was evacuated. Metrorail had one train operator on each track, offload riders, and perform track inspections with ventilation systems shut off. The train operators did not identify any hazardous conditions. Firefighters also reported no signs of smoke in the station. Metrorail resumed normal operations. Metrorail communications personnel had silenced and reset the alarm from the station. When the Maintenance Operations Center informed those personnel that the alarm continued to display, they reviewed system plans. They then identified that the alarm was in the drainage pumping station approximately 2,000 feet outside the station. The personnel went to that location and found dust blowing into the area from the tunnel, which likely led to the alarm activation. They then again reset the alarm. The investigation determined that the dust was from track work that had just been conducted in the area. Metrorail's failure to identify the location of the alarm in a timely fashion is similar to what occurred on July 30th, 2022, that we addressed during our last meeting in Investigation Whiskey 0195. It also relates to NTSB recommendation to WMATA R1616 relating to installing and maintaining a system to detect the presence and location of smoke throughout the tunnel and station network. The NTSB classifies this as open acceptable response. Metrorail put pilot devices in the system testing durability. Thank you. That completes this presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Key-Rose. Are there any questions from any of the commissioners for Ms. Key-Rose?
Chair Hart, while you wait for any questions from commissioners, can I please correct the understanding to a question that was raised previously by one of the commissioners, where the question was whether there are smoke detectors required in all parts of the system or in specific segments of the system. So just wanted to clarify that there is, and Ms. Key-Rose just alluded to that, there is a NTSB recommendation that arose out of the 2015 arcing accident at Lafont. And the recommendation from the NTSB is that Metrorail should install and maintain a system that will detect the presence and location of fire and smoke throughout the Washington Metropolitan Area Transit Authority, tunnel, and station network. And so there is a there is a recommendation from the NTSB that denotes that these capability for detecting the presence of and location of fire and smoke be available throughout the tunnel and station network.
Thank you for that, Ms. Samar Singh. That's very helpful. Do you happen to know whether what the status is on that recommendation, whether WMATA has done has done that recommendation?
If you will allow us to gather that information and come back to you all in a subsequent meeting, I would appreciate it.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you for bringing that to our attention. I appreciate that. While I've got you, Ms. Samar Singh, I was going to ask maybe Dr. Meyer, because I'm not sure this is an appropriate question for Ms. Key-Rose, but I'm just wondering, it seems like we see a lot of problems with responses to problems in the station in terms of whether to evacuate, whether to continue service into the station. Do you have any high level thoughts on whether that's a situation that's improving? There was some apparent mention of some improvement, but do you have any system-wide thoughts on whether that situation is improving regarding how to respond to problems that occur in the stations that may or may not need evacuation?
I hate to dodge a question. Let me say a couple of things. The decision making and the response to events that occur in stations is sort of an evergreen issue. It's been a long running issue. It is an issue that Metro has made some progress over the years on, but they've also recognized the need for further progress. So it's not a clear-cut answer that it's trending only in one direction. We do pay very close attention to SOP 1A and the improvements and adjustments that are made to it. I know that at senior levels, Metro is interested in making an improvement or improvements, plural, to responses in general, and particularly when they involve the decision making that's necessary in stations. We're absolutely committed to being with Metro as it addresses its procedures and makes any further changes in the future. I'm not sure if that's a really great answer to your question. Ms. Samarasinha, do you have any thoughts that you'd want to add to that?
I think you captured it appropriately. Thank you, Dr. Meyer.
All right, thank you for that. Any questions from any of the other commissioners?
Chair Hart, I have a question.
Yes, please, Commissioner Lobby.
Since we've discussed several of these evacuation issues, the improvements that we're talking about, is the issue at the Rock, or is the issue the incident command process? I think Dr. Meyer mentioned the standard procedure 1A or whatever. Does that impact both, or is that the incident command issue that we continually see isn't being followed?
Yeah, so I would say both in the field and in the ROCC. One of the things we mentioned earlier was these planned emergency exercises that Metro Rail conducts several times a year. That's very helpful to jurisdictions and to personnel in the field. They get a real world experience. And then the ROCC also participates remotely. The SOP 1A, they do have Metro Rail have conducted a gap analysis, and they found things were lacking, and they have started training on a new procedure, and it's not implemented yet, but they're definitely being proactive and trying to make it better.
Are they getting closer to compliance? I know we continually say that they didn't follow it, but are they getting closer to following it?
Yeah, I believe our team is pretty hopeful.
Hopeful. Okay. Very good. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Lobby. Any further questions? Okay, seeing none, the next report will come from Investigation Program Manager Adam Quigley. Mr. Quigley, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair Hart. First, there are 2 investigations related to 3 derailments of work vehicles, roadway maintenance machines, in long-term shutdown areas. Investigation Whiskey 206 relates to the derailment of a flat car on the yellow line on October 2nd, 2022. This was in the area that remained shut down for a couple more months between LaFont Plaza and Pentagon stations. Metro Rail Kiewit contractors operating a high rail vehicle that was pushing 3 rail carts operated the consist over wheel stops. They dragged the wheel stops for approximately 2,000 feet, scraping and damaging rail infrastructure. This continued until the lead cart derailed at approximately 12:16 a.m. Communication and coordination about the derailment, including the delayed dispatch of Metro Rail personnel for investigation and repairs and any emergency response, was inconsistent. These issues, related to both personnel in the work area and the Safety Department's Mission Assurance Coordinator in the Rail Operations Control Center, contributed to a lack of immediate Metro Rail response and delayed reporting of this accident to the WMSC and FTA. The equipment operator, with Kiewit Yard Superintendent acting as a flag person, was moving the consist to transport a scissor lift on one of the flat carts to another part of the work zone. Neither identified any issues until hearing and feeling a loud bang as the leading flat car derailed. The wheel stops that were dragged matched the wheel stops Kiewit uses for rail cranes, which are different from those Kiewit uses for other vehicles. A crane had been lifted from that track to the adjacent track several hours earlier. Kiewit procedures require completion of a pre-move checklist, including walking the proposed travel path and removing all wheel chocks. This did not occur. Corrective actions include Kiewit safety stand down focused on proper use of equipment and pre-trip inspections. Metro Rail counseled the Mission Assurance Coordinator regarding reporting procedures. Examples of related open caps include C0162 regarding the National Incident Management System and Incident Command System, and C0163 regarding the Mission Assurance Coordinator training, responsibilities, communication, coordination, and staffing. Investigation Whiskey 207 relates to two derailments of a Metro Rail tamper on September 13th, 2022 in the area where track construction was underway to connect to the new Potomac Yard infill station on the blue and yellow lines. A tamper is a vehicle that is used to align and level the rail ties and tracks by compacting the ballast and making related adjustments. Metro Rail's contractors for station construction had placed sub-ballast, ballast, rails, and ties. The ballast is the rocks that support the rail ties and provide for drainage. The large amount of ballast that had been placed covered the ties and nearly all of the rails, obscuring the ties and all but the top of the rails from view. Metro Rail had expected the contractors to also conduct the subsequent tamping work. However, the contractor's tamper unit did not meet Metro Rail safety requirements, and therefore Metro Rail personnel correctly did not allow the tamper to be used until the safety issues were addressed. Rather than waiting, Metro Rail assigned its own tamper and crew to go on the work area and begin tamping to attempt to maintain planned schedules. The track conditions were unusual for Metro Rail's tamper and crew. The crew did not get any special instructions for the work from Metro Rail or the contractor. The tamper derailed at approximately 3:15 a.m. This was later reported to the Maintenance Operations Center at 3:59 a.m. and to the Rail Operations Control Center Operations Manager at 4:14 a.m. Interviews on scene identified that the tamper's automated systems indicated the elevation change required for both rails was about 9 inches. This is a relatively large amount. The tamper's operating screen indicated the left rail was 8.8 inches below the necessary level. The equipment operator said they had set the tamper to raise the track in 2 to 3 inch increments. The unit derailed over a rail joint supported by a joint bar. The remaining ballast continued to prevent a full view of the joint bar. An on-site inspection did not identify any damage to the tamper. Metro Rail identified safety mitigations such as operating at a slower speed and limiting the elevation change of the rails attempted in each pass. The next shift's crew arrived and worked based on those mitigations. However, at 12:10 p.m., the mobile command manager reported the tamper derailed again in the same area, not long after work resumed. The settlement of the ballast revealed a joint bar that was attached with only a single bolt on each side of the joint, rather than the two required for Metro Rail construction. Mismatched rail ends at the joint were also visible. A vehicle inspection showed that the suspension on the side of the wheel climb appeared to be unloaded. The suspension loaded normally in an area of the track with less extreme cross-level differences. The elevation varied through the area of the derailment. Metro Rail added 2 additional bolts to the joint bar, and the tamping crew then completed the assigned work. The following day, Metro Rail granted a waiver to the contractor's tamper to permit it to operate in the system without meeting all safety requirements. Initially, the waiver required the tamper to be used and moved only in the construction area. A later version of the waiver provided alternate mitigations, allowing the vehicle to be moved from Alexandria Rail Yard to the construction location as long as it was escorted by a Metro Rail prime mover. The WMSC personnel visited the derailment site the day after the derailment to verify the bolts were in place on the joint bar and to further understand track conditions. Corrective actions related to this event include ensuring that track constructions personnel perform their own inspection of a work area and conduct any necessary preparatory work before assisting with new track construction. This includes documented work planning and sign-off. Metro Rail is also updating contract requirements to include additional track construction requirements and to include the contractor rail vehicle inspection requirements. Other actions noted by vehicle engineering include obtaining the operational limits for the tamper from the manufacturer and opportunities for improvement related to sub-ballast grading. As noted earlier, the WMSC is in the process of conducting an audit of Metro Rail's roadway maintenance machine program. Thank you. That completes this presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Quigley. Are there any questions from any of the commissioners for Mr. Quigley? Okay, seeing none, Mr. Quigley, would you please present the final 2 reports?
Thank you, Chair Hart. These investigations relate to collisions in early October 2022. Whiskey 208 relates to a train colliding with a rider who had fallen from the Wheaton Station platform on October 4th, 2022. The rider entered the station and walked toward the end of the station platform. Video suggests this person was walking unsteadily. The person fell from the platform to the track bed. They were approximately 41 feet or half a car length from the eight car marker at the end gate that indicates where a train must stop. The person remained motionless on the roadway for approximately 10 minutes before being struck. The train operator, with a student operator observing, moved the train into the station in accordance with operating requirements. Approximately halfway into the station, the operators reported that the student operator alerted the train operator to the person on the roadway. The train operator applied an increased level of braking, moving the master controller to the emergency position. The front of the train stopped approximately 34 feet from the end of the platform, approximately 7 feet past the person on the roadway. After exiting the train operator reported from the station platform that the rider had injuries to their left hand. Review of the video as part of the investigation indicated that no one witnessed the person fall and that the station manager was performing other duties at the time of the event, so also would not have seen the fall on station cameras. Investigation Whiskey 209 relates to a collision at Friendship Heights Station on October 6, 2022. A person intentionally placed themselves in the path of the train. Metro Rail effectively responded to this emergency, including power de-energization, emergency response, and assisting riders on the train to the platform through the leading cars. Thank you. That completes today's investigation report.
Thank you, Mr. Quigley. Are there any questions from the commissioners for Mr. Quigley? Okay, as I mentioned at the beginning of the investigation reports, I'm going to consider them collectively in the motion to adopt. So that's Whiskey 0201, 0202, 0203, 0204, 0205, 0206, 0207, 0208, and 0209. I'm going to move the adoption of all of those reports. Is there a second to my motion?
Second.
Okay, second, Commissioner Lobby. Thank you very much. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say yay. Yay.
Yay.
Any opposed, please raise your hand and say nay.
Chair Hart, the vote is 6-0 and the motion carries.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Smith. We have no resolutions or other actions on our agenda today, so that completes our business. As a reminder, you can always report any concerns through our website, WMSC.gov, through our social media channels like Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, or by email. Before we leave the meeting, I would like to thank Dr. Meyer, Ms. Samara Singha, and their team for their presentations for this remote meeting. I would like to also thank the commissioners for their extensive engagement in the process, including at this meeting. And I would like to thank the members of the public for attending this meeting. We look forward to seeing you again next month at our next public meeting, which we expect to hold on April 11th, 2023. We look forward to seeing you then. Is there any further business? Hearing none, this meeting is hereby adjourned.